In 2018, the World Health Organization will consider reclassifying the aging process as a disease. This matters because for the first time in human history, the once natural process of aging will become recontextualized as a condition, something that can be treated, prevented. This decision could lead to governments and pharmaceutical companies redirecting new funds to new drugs or new therapies that not only extend human life expectancy, but reverse the effects of aging altogether. Obviously, this reclassification is controversial, and chances are it may even be rejected this time around. But the fact that science is now in a position to entertain this idea, it says a lot. Thus far, people in developed nations have seen their average life expectancy jump from 35 in 1820 all the way to 80 in 2003. And with all the advances now in the pipeline, it's kind of silly to think that this growth in our life expectancy will stop anytime soon. Within a few decades, healthcare science will see to it that 80 becomes the new 40. In fact, the first humans expected to live well into their hundreds may have already been born. We're entering into an era where we'll not only enjoy increased life expectancy, but also more youthful bodies well into our old age. With enough time, science will even find a way to stunt aging altogether. In all, we're about to enter the brave new world of super longevity. Hello and welcome to Life in 2030, a podcast produced by QuantumRun.com that focuses on the trends and innovations that will shape your world over the next 2 decades. My name's David Tall, and I'm your host. And this season, we're exploring the impact our generation will have on shaping the future of humanity. To that end, myself and a few experts will use this episode to explore the growing field of life extension or longevity, the science behind it, what will become possible, and the wider impact this field might have on society at large. To bring this idea to life, our team here at Quantum Run put together this short scenario or radio play to give you a preview of the themes this podcast will cover. Enjoy.
Hey, Rebecca?
Yeah, hi. Nathan, right?
Yeah, it's great to finally meet you.
Yeah, you too. I've never been to this place before.
Me neither. Actually, a friend recommended it. I really like what the VR designer did with the place. It looks pretty authentic for a Manhattan lounge.
I know. I was thinking that myself. Ugh, it's so weird, this whole virtual reality dating thing.
Yeah, I guess it does take some getting used to.
I guess. It is pretty convenient, though. At least for the first meeting and all.
Well, so far, so good. You look great, by the way.
Thank you. Actually, that's the one thing I like about VR dates. You get to dress up in these outrageously expensive designer dresses. They definitely don't look like this in real life, though.
Oh, really? Huh. That's too bad. I at least look this good all the time.
Well, aren't you ballsy from the get-go?
Hi there. Sorry to interrupt. Can I get you 2 some drinks?
Sure. I'll try your house wine.
Great. And yourself?
I guess I'll have the same.
Great. I'll bring those right up.
Thank you.
I'm always surprised when they come and ask about that. I mean, it's not like we'll be able to drink these things.
True, but it doesn't hurt to play along. It's not like we'll get drunk off all these virtual drinks either.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
So, how about we start off easy? Maybe you can tell me a little bit about your day. I think your profile said you worked in farming or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm actually a vertical farming manager at the Citibank Tower.
Oh, right. I heard about that. They're converting that building into a farm, right?
Yep. My team and I are managing that project. It's a lot of work, but I love it. It's really rewarding. How about you? Your profile was so empty. What do you do? Are you some kind of spy or something?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not quite that interesting. I'm actually a personal health consultant. I specialize in aging reversal therapies.
Oh, wow. How did you get into that?
Well, long story short, when I was younger, I was always into sports. And then after an especially nasty injury, I got really interested in how the human body works, how it repairs itself. I started off as a physiotherapist and did that for a while, but the second I heard about the first aging suspension and reversal treatments, I knew I had to get in early.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's become such a big thing now. Still, though, I don't know. It still just feels crazy that we can do that now, you know? I mean, I just turned 29 and all, but I'm still not sure if it's my thing.
Really? Why not? You seem like a perfect fit for it.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just a bit old-fashioned.
I hear you. But actually, around your age is when a lot of my clients start stunning their aging process. There's really no better time to get into it.
Maybe. I guess I just kind of like the idea of growing old, or at least growing old with someone special, you know? I just think that there's something romantic about it all, don't you think?
To a point. I mean, I don't have anything against aging per se, but from my experience at least, I'd rather age without growing old. I mean, why should anyone spend their best years in a body that keeps getting weaker and sicker? That doesn't seem fun to me. That said, I'm obviously biased.
That's fair. I don't know. I guess for me, I just remember growing up with my grandma during the summers and just experiencing her energy. I remember the amount of light that came out of her, even in her older body. It's like you can grow old but still be beautiful. Also, I feel like you appreciate your time more if your life is filled with a sense of urgency or temporariness. And I feel like natural aging gives you that. I'm sure you think I'm nuts, huh?
I do, but in the best possible way. Promise.
Okay, well, what about you? I assume you're going to get these treatments yourself, right? How long do you want to live for?
Well, I don't really think about it that way. I mean, I don't have some magic number for how long I'd like to live to. You know, for me, I just want to have a say in how long I live and how well I live.
I guess that's reasonable. So you're starting soon then?
Sorry?
The treatments. By what you've told me, you seem like you're the perfect age for it.
Oh, well, actually, I've already been on these treatments for a while now. Almost as long as the treatments have been available, really.
Wait, what? But your profile said that you were 31.
Biologically, I am.
Nathan, how old are you? In real years?
Does that really even matter anymore?
Yeah, it does to me.
Okay, well, to be honest, I don't really keep track anymore. I was born in 1963, so I guess that makes me 84 now? Yeah, that sounds right.
What? That was my grandma's age before she... Ugh, God. Shouldn't you be dating someone your own age?
I am. We're both adults. I mean, my body's just as young as yours.
You know what I mean.
Right, so let me get this straight. Me going on a date with you looks weirder than if I were to date a wrinkly senior citizen. Sorry, but I kind of feel like me and wrinkles would turn way more heads walking down the street than, I don't know, you and I.
Hi there, I got your drinks. Sorry it took so long. The bar staff has been really busy tonight. Were you two thinking of dinner as well?
I'm sorry. I have to go.
Wait, Rebecca, I'm sorry. That was rude.
No, sorry. This is weirding me out.
How about I grab you the bill?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Well, that was an overly dramatic way to open a podcast. Bad first states aside, what this radio play tried to highlight was a future scenario where super longevity becomes normalized by one half of society while remaining taboo by another. A process that every disruptive science or technology goes through. But let's dig deeper here. Just what is super longevity? Well, for the purposes of this podcast, whenever we refer to super longevity or life extension, we're referring to any process that extends the average human lifespan into the triple digits. Of course, whenever we talk about the longevity field, one obvious question always pops up. Why do we age at all? Well, to be clear, there is no universal rule in nature that says all living animals or plants must have a set lifespan, or in our case, a set lifespan of 100 years. Marine species such as the bowhead whale or Greenland shark are recorded to live for over 200 years, and the longest living Galapagos giant tortoise died recently at the ripe old age of 176. Meanwhile, deep-sea creatures such as certain jellyfish, sponges, and corals don't appear to age at all. The rate that humans age and the total length of time our bodies allow us to age is largely influenced by evolution and, as outlined in our introduction, by advances in medicine. The nuts and bolts of exactly why we age is still unclear, but researchers are zeroing in on a few theories that point to genetic errors and environmental contaminants being the most to blame. Specifically, the complex molecules and cells that make up our bodies replicate and repair themselves constantly over many years of our lives. Over time, enough genetic errors and contaminants accumulate in our body that they gradually deteriorate these complex molecules and cells, causing them to become increasingly dysfunctional until they stop working entirely. Thankfully, this century may see an end to these genetic errors and a cure for these environmental contaminants, and this may just grant us many extra years to look forward to. So just how do scientists plan to stop the aging process? After asking a few experts in the field, they agree that there won't be any one magic bullet that will do the trick. Instead, stunting or reversing the aging process will involve a series of minor medical therapies that will eventually become part of your annual wellness and health maintenance regimen. To elaborate on this view, we're joined by our first guest, Daisy Robinton, postdoctoral researcher at Harvard University and the Boston Children's Hospital who specializes in cancer and stem cell biology. This is what she had to say.
I feel that there is a large mix of things that people are sort of developing to push longevity research forward. And I think as with any, huge area of research, that there's going to take a combination of things that's really going to move us forward in a way that we can really see and feel in our daily lives. I believe, coming from sort of the stem cell background, that the mixture of both gene editing technology and regenerative biology, that's studying stem cells or getting cells and organs to regenerate, are sort of a very nice complementary set of technologies that are going to really enable us to do more in terms of addressing age-related diseases and sort of pushing out that edge of longevity further. I also think, being a person sort of in this space, that I think it's really important we continue to develop these technologies and really learn what we can do with them and really learn how we can complement our own natural biology in a way that enables us to live not necessarily longer lives, but just better lives, healthier lives where we feel till our dying day that we can think well and function well and move around and do the things that some might look back and wish that they could have that feeling of, when they're 20 years old or 30 years old. I want to be able to create a space and a time that we extend that feeling of wellness longer. And I also tend to believe that in doing so, we will be increasing our longevity and we'll be increasing the number of years that we're able to be alive and thrive.
Developing a variety of treatments that can help people thrive through healthier and longer lives and more youthful bodies. We asked Daisy to elaborate further by asking her to share her insights into some of the most promising advancements in longevity being researched today.
There are a wide variety of approaches people are trying, and from my vantage point, I'm not totally sure where's getting the most research dollars, but the ones that seem to, cross my position of awareness the most often are probably gene editing and then small molecule therapeutics to sort of manipulate, the cell, whether it's senolytics, which is sort of being able to cause cells that are in senescence to die and sort of clear away damaged or unused material to make room for material in your body that is functioning and is sort of active and participating in your biology, for lack of a better description. And I mean, ultimately, all of our cells and organs and everything is really governed by our DNA sequence and structure and regulation. And so being able to manipulate that DNA sequence is sort of the gene editing piece, where if we are able to move the function of something into a direction that we like, or, repair, which is a big one, if we accumulate DNA mutations over our lifetime, if we're able to deliver therapeutics that are gene therapy oriented, that sort of fix some of the mutations we accumulate that build up over time and keep us from functioning as efficiently. I think that's definitely a huge area of research, and that's definitely something that I think we'll see. I also think that with the rise of DNA sequencing technology and the paired sort of decrease in cost of having DNA sequencing done, we're also going to have a huge rise of this like wealth of data in the DNA sphere, where individuals are going to have their genomes sequenced at a much greater rate. I think in the next, I don't know, maybe 20 years, we're going to start seeing that as a standard of care for a lot of young people, maybe even kids as part of their childhood checkups. And so we're just going to have a lot more information. And with that information, we're going to be able to guide a lot more manipulation to our sort of natural state, if you will. And both in the context of gene editing, but then also in the ways that sort of DNA is regulated and molecules within the cell are orchestrated to carry out functions. And there was just a recent publication that came out in the journal Science of really interesting work done by David Sinclair, who's a big researcher in the longevity field, which was more of I don't know if small molecule approach is the right characterization, but he identified a new sort of team of proteins and molecules that functions to bind to DNA and help sort of maintain the cell in its best state for functioning or not, and that's sort of one of the big things in the longevity field is you get these cells that sort of get built up of mutations and these things are happening and then they just kind of sit there and they're not really functioning and they're gunky and that's not really good for us. And if we can find a way to kind of clear away material that's not serving us or clear away the cells that isn't serving us, and that's really going to help us be healthier. And so he identified two new proteins and a new sort of structural relationship of these molecules in the cell that will enable us to do that. So I think that area, which isn't directly obviously gene editing, but it is the relationship between the DNA in the cell and other molecules in the cell. And it's sort of this, this idea of clearance and having a highly functioning, machine, if you will, if the cell is a machine. I mean, it's like your car, you take it in to get it fixed up and cleaned out. And sometimes when the pipes get clogged and stuff, it's just not working as well. So we're no different in that respect. And I think those two things are really going to be important, manipulating the DNA and then sort of clearing away that unwanted buildup of material that happens as we age.
Gene editing, small molecule therapeutics, cleansing the body of damaged cells to maintain optimal health and longevity. To recap the various longevity research approaches Daisy mentioned, they fall into 4 categories. The first approach is through the development of what's called senolytic drugs. These are medicines that scientists hope can reverse some of the biological processes related to aging. There are a bunch of these drugs currently being tested. Probably the one most people are familiar with is resveratrol, the chemical compound found in red wine. The next approach is organ replacement. Organ replacements by themselves could potentially push the average human lifespan into the 2020s or 2030s, as death by organ failure will become a thing of the past. And when we're talking about organ replacements, this involves using artificial machine replacements, as well as using your DNA to 3D print replacement organs. Next up is gene editing and gene therapy. For the first time in the history of our species, we're now gaining direct control over our genetic code. This means we'll finally have the ability to fix unhealthy mutations in our DNA by replacing them with healthy DNA. Initially, by the 2030s, this will spell the end of most genetic diseases. But by the 2040s, we'll know enough about our DNA to edit out those DNA elements that contribute to the aging process. And finally, the last approach, one that Daisy didn't mention, is the use of nanotechnology by the middle of this century. Nanotech is basically microscopic machines that will swim through your body's blood vessels and repair any aging-related damage they find. Ultimately, the goal of these approaches or therapies working together will be to slow or shut down the factors that lead to aging, while also healing all of the damage and injuries our bodies experience during our day-to-day interactions with the environment we live in. Due to this holistic approach, much of the science behind extending our lifespans will work in tandem with the general healthcare industry's goals of curing all diseases and healing all injuries, topics we'll cover in future podcasts. So now that we've got the sciencey elements of life extension out of the way, now we can talk about the important stuff. Specifically, how this revolution in aging will revolutionize our society and your life. To start, we have to talk about how the global rate of population growth, especially among developing nations, is beginning to slow to a point that within 2 decades, there will be as many senior citizens as we define them today as there are young people. Just this trend alone, without mentioning longevity, is going to have a significant impact on how our society functions. To help us explore this point, we called on Paul Irving, chairman for the Milken Institute's Center for the Future of Aging. This is what he had to say.
Sure. Well, there's increasing recognition in the policy sector about the reality of changing demography, both on a local level and on a global level. We know that in the United States, 10,000 people a day are turning 65 on a global basis. 900 million people or so over 60 will grow to about 2.1 billion by mid-century. So this trend is really going to change everything. Longevity will change every aspect of society, in policy, in business, in education, philanthropy, the commercial world, et cetera. And advanced leaders, future-thinking leaders, are focused on adapting their societies and adapting their institutions to this very, very different demography. How that manifests is in a range of ways. So it could be new approaches to housing and urban planning and transportation systems, and again the kinds of businesses that are attracted and built both on a national basis and on a local basis. I would say that the most interesting examples these days tend to be in smaller countries where oftentimes the leaders are kind of closer to the ground and more able to see how these demographic trends actually affect daily lives. So in places like Singapore and Ireland and the Netherlands, there are a series of initiatives, again, focused on improving housing for an aging population and ensuring that transit systems are age-friendly, et cetera. In the United States, this seems to occur less at the national level. We're obviously in a period of some level of dissension and discord. There's a lot going on, and oftentimes older people in these longer-term demographic trends are forgotten in the midst of all the daily hubbub. But at the local level, there are a lot of really interesting things going on. One very, very important example that I'm proud of in our own city and county is an initiative that the Mayor of Los Angeles and the County Board of Supervisors adopted last year called Purposeful Aging Los Angeles, which is focused on ensuring that older adults are thought of in connection with all policy decisions. So whether it's building and safety or economic development or the airports or the port or walkable streets or safety, parks, you name it. One of the agenda items on everyone's list these days is how will it affect our increasingly old population, and that's certainly a model that we see being adopted by other cities with again thoughtful, forward-thinking leaders. New York City, for example, has a similar program, and we see this also in some smaller towns around the U.S. Certainly, one of our objectives is to move this policy conversation to the front of the agenda of not just local leaders, but very much national leaders. We really have two choices as a society in the United States, and this is very much true, again, in societies with aging populations across the world. Do we do nothing? At which point our populations become older, less well, less financially secure, with extraordinary personal consequences and societal burdens? Or do we change the way we think about older adults, focus on keeping them healthier, focus on keeping them, enabling them to work longer and to participate more actively throughout their lives? And the potential consequences, not only for individuals and families, but for the broader society, are extraordinarily positive. So those are the big policy challenges that I think we all face. And we're very focused on elevating that conversation, both on a regional level, a national level, and very much on a global level as well.
Redesigning our cities to work for the elderly, planning all future government policies with senior citizens in mind. Now let's take our conversation back to the topic of longevity. Let's assume we transition to a world where everyone lives substantially longer lives, with stronger, more youthful bodies. How will society adjust to widespread extended lifespans? Here again, Paul shared his thoughts.
So what we know about advances in science is that the future is really hard to predict. Who could have predicted a couple decades ago that we would have successfully decoded the human genome, and who would have predicted maybe in that same time period that the internet would have changed lives across the planet? So we hear predictions. In my world, I have colleagues that predict that human longevity is unlikely to extend more than 4 or 5 years beyond where it is today. There's been some recent publicity about some research that suggests that ultimate lifespans are somewhere in the range of 120 to 125 years, and there are bioscientists today who predict that the next generation will live to 200. And of course, there are people in bioengineering who believe that we can replicate life, and even if the machine begins to fail, that we can somehow retain life virtually perpetually. So it's tough to predict exactly where we'll be, but I think what we can safely assume, because there's been a fairly consistent level of progression in longevity over the last 150 years or so, is that lives are likely to be longer. How much longer they'll be, we don't know. And what that means is that it's even more important to focus on keeping people both health secure and financially secure for a longer period in their lives. Now, these are not just issues that affect older people. These are things that have to be discussed and thought about and planned for, really for young people as well. We all begin aging the moment we're born. Aging is the one characteristic that we all share. So it's not just about addressing these challenges of older people. It's about expressing to young people the likelihood. Some might call it the risks. Some might call it the opportunity of much longer lives. And what does that mean for multiple careers and lifelong learning, and the challenges of longer relationships, and the potential for exciting new things, and for multiple opportunities throughout life. So I said earlier on that longevity will change everything. I absolutely believe that, and this is one of those areas where science is very much doing its part. But as I often say, science has done its part by extending lives, by virtually doubling lifespans in the last 125, 150 years as a result of advancements in medical research and sanitation and safety. But social science has in many ways failed, and that is that those of us who are social scientists haven't really figured out what to do with this extraordinary longevity dividend. We're living longer lives, but we're really not sure what to do with these longer lives. And I think that's the great challenge, honestly, of the next number of years. Yes, science will continue to improve, and whether it's Art Levinson's Calico lab at Google, now Alphabet, or Craig Venter's lab in San Diego, or a lot what's going on at the NIH and NIA and various other places, that work will continue. But my question for your listeners, certainly, and my question for those in my field, is as science continues to make this extraordinary progress, what are we going to do as social scientists? What are we going to do as policymakers, as philanthropists, as business people, to capitalize on this remarkable human capital development that really has no historical precedent? And what do we think about it? How do we talk about it? And how do we express it to our children and grandchildren?
So, based on Paul's insights, what are we going to do to capitalize on our future youth dividend? To tackle this question, let's focus on the individual. Imagine how you'd have to rethink your life if you opted in for these life extension treatments. Today, based on a widely expected lifespan of roughly 80 to 85 years, most people follow the basic life stage formula where you stay in school and learn a profession until the age of 22 to 25, establish your career and enter a serious long-term relationship by 30, start a family and purchase a mortgage by 40, raise your children and save for retirement until you reach 65, then you retire trying to enjoy your remaining years by conservatively spending your nest egg. However, If that expected lifespan expanded to 150, we'll need to scrap the life stage formula I just described entirely. Think about it. If you could live well into your hundreds, there will be less pressure to start your post-secondary education immediately after high school, or less pressure to finish your degree early. There will be less pressure to start and stick to one profession, company, or industry, as your working years will allow for multiple professions in a variety of industries. There will be less pressure to marry early, ultimately leading to longer periods of casual dating. Even the concept of forever marriages will have to be rethought, potentially being replaced by decades-long marriage contracts that recognize the impermanence of true love over a lifespan that can last centuries. Similarly, there will also be less pressure to have children early, as women can devote decades to establishing independent careers without the worry of becoming infertile. And forget about retirement. To afford a lifespan that stretches into the 100s, you'll need to work well into those three digits. Meanwhile, for governments worried about providing for generations of elderly citizens, the widespread implementation of life extension therapies could be a godsend. A population with this kind of lifespan could counter the negative effects of a declining population growth rate, keep a nation's productivity levels stable, maintain our current consumption-based economy, and reduce national expenditure on healthcare and social security. At the end of the day, whether or not you find the changes I just outlined to be positive or negative depends a great deal on the values you grew up with. For those people who are able to nurture a curious and positive mindset, all this extra time will give them extra decades to explore the world, try new experiences, and learn about everything that has ever captured their attention. For others, a longer life could be more of a curse than a blessing, as it might steal away their motivation or urgency to experience key life events or pursue and accomplish substantial goals. Either way, the first life extension treatments are only a decade or two from being available to the public. Whether or not you decide to use it will end up being one of the most defining choices of your life. With all that in mind, maybe it's about time you start planning ahead and thinking about how you'll use all those extra years. So what do you think? Is life extension therapy all it's cracked up to be? Is it a good thing, or will it do more harm than good? Would you want to live until 120 or longer? Send us your thoughts at feedback@quantumrun.com. We'll publish the most thoughtful feedback on our website. Or post a comment in one of our Future of Human Population articles, also published on quantumrun.com. We go into way more detail about this topic there, and the links to all of these articles are listed in the podcast description below. We want to thank Paul Irving, Chairman at the Milken Institute's Center for the Future of Aging, as well as Daisy Robinton from the Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard University for sharing their insights about this topic. Links to the projects are in the podcast description below. As for the music you heard throughout this podcast, it was composed by Carl Gutowski. And a special thanks goes out to our voiceover artists, Sarah Rosangela, Bentley Michaels, and Laura K. Welsh. If you'd like to listen to more podcasts from Quantum Run, then we recommend listening to our Quantum Run on One podcast found on our website. It's our sister podcast, and it takes on future trends by way of long-form interviews with leading experts, researchers, and thinkers. Finally, want to support the show? Then be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And be sure to like, heart, share, review, and recommend this podcast to your friends. The more support we get from fans like you, the more often we can publish new episodes. It really does help. That's it for now, but be sure to join us for another episode of Life in 2030.